If you're struggling to find healthy meals that actually taste good too, you are in the right place. Hi, this is your first time on the channel. Thanks for joining. I'm Dr. Shayla Nettie, and I'm a doctor who helps people figure out meals that help them get back to their healthier self and actually taste good too. Today, we're going to be doing one of my favorite recipes, and it's super simple because number one, we're not going to be standing over the stove, but most of it is going to be really quick because we're using sheet pans. And I'll talk with you about what seasonings I use to really give it a lot of flavor, particularly if you're someone who struggles with high blood pressure. You can still have lots of flavor without having to rely on salt in your food. For anyone who's focusing on monitoring or managing their blood sugars, we're going to be using vegetables that tend to be lower starch vegetables, so that's going to be really helpful. And of course, lastly, we're going to make sure it tastes good. That's the whole point, because if it tastes good, then you'll keep eating it. And I think this tastes really good. It's actually one of my favorite soups for this time of year, especially when it's cold outside. You want something warm, but you want something creamy too. So let me show you how I do it. So we're going to do the celery, the carrots, the onions, the kale. I want to show you guys over here in my pantry. I always keep lots of canned goods. Reduced sodium, that's important. So we're going to use these chickpeas, this sourdough bread. I'm going to show you how I'm going to use this tofu too. These mushrooms, I'm going to use that too. To use these better than bouillon stocks because it's like a paste that you can then add to water. Yeah, so this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one here, the better than bouillon vegetable base. And then my go-to seasonings are going to be some garlic powder, onion powder, paprika because it adds a nice little flavor. This is going to be what we use for some of our toppings. Smoked paprika to do some Italian seasoning. Get a good mix of marjoram, savory, rosemary, basil, sage, and lavender. I got most of the vegetables set up: the kale, the carrots, the celery, the onions. The only thing I gotta prep now is gonna be the garlic and the cauliflower. We're gonna use all the cauliflower. I think we're gonna save just a quarter of the cauliflower because we're gonna use that as a topping. You can use frozen cauliflower. Don't feel like you have to use fresh, but this is gonna add a level of creaminess to this to make it super tasty, and then you're just getting the health benefits from the cauliflower. We'll save this one for the topping. Break it off because it's gonna be roasted. And even this part we're gonna use. Chop it finely like that. And we're gonna put this on the sheet pan. So put that there. This is gonna go over to the side with the cauliflower, but save the stems because we're gonna do something with the stems. The kale in here. Put the cauliflower, that little piece that we didn't chop up yet, put that in there. Quick tip, you want to hold your knife like this. So you put your thumb on the blade here, put your index finger on the blade here, your 3 fingers here are going to go to hold the handle, and now you're gripping the blade, not down here because I'll cut you, up here. And then when you're cutting something fine, you just rock. Your fingers will be like a claw. So when you hold the food, you want to hold it like this, and your knuckle is protecting your finger so you don't chop off your finger. I'll rock. So now I can't cut my finger because my knuckle is protecting me. We're gonna roast these up. It'll be really pretty. So all those are going there. It's gonna be a nice topping. Lots of flavor for the soup. Our carrots, I'm just gonna chop the ends. I'm not gonna peel them. I'm gonna rinse them off, wash them, and I'm gonna keep this. We want all this fiber. It's going to help in lots of different ways. So if you're someone who has diabetes and you're trying to stick with low starchy types of foods, number one, the cauliflower is a low starch vegetable. Number two, all the fiber in this meal from the cauliflower, from the kale, from the carrots, it will slow down how quickly your body absorbs the glucose or the sugar that's in any food. And that's gonna be really important if you have diabetes because you're not gonna have these big jumps in your glucose, which will make you want to take more insulin. This is going to slow it down with the fiber from the vegetables. If you're someone who struggles with high blood pressure or you have a health condition for high blood pressure, the main thing you're going to want to do is decrease the amount of salt you have. So if you're cooking this, instead of using the veggie stock I mentioned, I would stick with water and then just stick with all these low salt or no salt seasonings that I'm going to show you in a bit. All right, so quick rinse and a rough chop. Please be careful when you chop carrots because they're very thick. You really want to make sure your knife is sharp so you can go through this pretty easily. And then I might just cut it in half just because this is a really big carrot. Once it's roasted, it's gonna bring out the natural sweetness that is in carrot. So that's gonna help out a lot with this soup to balance some of the bitterness that we'll have from the greens. Another quick pro tip, you wanna use parchment paper. Put the parchment paper on a sheet pan. That'll make for really easy cleanup. So that way you wanna do this again and not have to do a lot of cleanup after. We're gonna put our vegetables on the sheet pan with the parchment paper. We'll toss them in avocado oil because it's a high heat oil. So that means when it's in the oven on that 450 degrees, it's not gonna burn. Here's my onion. Just cut it into 4 chunks. And make sure you're using a sheet pan that's big enough to hold all the veggies. Because you want to make sure when you put the veggies on here and you toss them in the oil and the seasoning that you're not steaming the veggies. That's going to make it just soft. We want it to be caramelized because that caramelization, that roasting, is going to add a lot of flavor. It's going to make the soup very good without having to add lots of salt and things like that, especially since we're using vegetables. Then my favorite part, the seasoning. So we got our garlic. And because this is not a salt-based seasoning, you can add as much as you like. Add a little bit of onion powder, well, the rest of my onion powder. I'm gonna add a little bit of paprika. It's gonna change the color a little bit, but I like it because it adds like a nice flavor. Then we'll do our Italian seasoning. It's probably like a tablespoon or so. And now if you're someone who has issue with high blood pressure, here's where you'll stop. You won't be adding any salt, or if you are, you're adding a very small amount. This is sea salt. We just toss it with our hands and make sure everybody's got seasoning. So this is what it should look like. I mean, you know, just some nice seasoning on there. And once you think that you've got enough coverage on your veggies, now it can go into the oven. While we have the veggies in the oven, I also want to show you a quick way we can use the garlic to also roast this and then get our toppings prepped. So all you have to do with this garlic is just slice it, just the top of it, so that way this will be roasted. So there are some little green parts, but because I'm roasting it, I think that should be fine. Garlic right in the middle, get a little bit of that avocado oil and just drizzle a little bit on top, and then turn it up, and we'll place that on the sheet pan, on a new sheet pan. This is gonna go in the oven. But first, so I got chickpeas. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna roast these as our topping. Pour off the liquid, go rinse and drain this, and then we'll cook it from. Chickpeas are rinsed, drained. Now we're gonna add some of our seasoning. I'm gonna use this smoked paprika. And because there's no sodium in this, you can use as much as or as little as you like. I like to have a lot. Garlic powder, because garlic powder is a must in this house. And again, if you have high blood pressure, I'm only using a pinch of sea salt. The other thing you can use to try to add more flavor without adding salt is going to be an acid. And so the acid I'm going to use today is going to be this apple cider vinegar. It's going to just add more flavor without having to rely so much on salt. And I'm always thinking that when I'm cooking, thinking, all right, salt, fat, acid, and heat. I did not make that up. That's actually from a chef. Maybe I'll put a thing of her book over to the side. Her book is called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. Actually, let me show you. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and it's by Chef Samin Nosrat. And that's really the key. This is actually the key to flavors, your flavors in your food being really good. The added salt, our acid was the vinegar. The heat is going to be my red pepper flakes. I'm just going to add a little bit of these as heat. If you don't like spicy stuff, you don't have to add these, but I like a little kick. Our fat is going to be the avocado oil. So we're just going to add a little bit of this, just like we did with the vegetables, and toss it with our hands. Or you can use a spatula if you don't want your fingers to get red from the paprika. But that's how it'll look, okay? In the same sheet pan that has the garlic that we're gonna roast, we just pour the chickpeas right there. We're gonna save this bowl because we're gonna use it for our tofu. Okay, so if I'm gonna use tofu, because I know a lot of people struggle with the texture of tofu. First off, I recommend using extra firm. I like using tofu because it is a good source of protein. So for this one, serving size is 3 ounces, which is a typical serving size of most proteins, and that will give you 9 grams of protein. Oh, I also forgot to say the same thing is true for the chickpeas. Yeah, the chickpeas you get actually 6 grams of protein, and the serving size is about half a cup. So we're adding in our protein with these two. What you'll see when you open it, there's gonna be a lot of liquid. I'm gonna drain off the liquid. Some people will use tofu presses and all that stuff, type of stuff, or even have a paper towel. But because it's extra firm already, I find that I don't need to do all of that. So I'll just drain it, maybe dry it off a little bit with a paper towel, and then I'll get to cubing it. So. Okay, it's liquid, but because it's extra firm, I'm not gonna do a lot. Okay, and then I'm gonna take that bowl we used for the chickpeas, put the tofu right in there, because we're gonna use the same seasonings. So we might as well take advantage of that bowl. Clean up as we go. Add a little bit more of the smoked paprika, garlic powder, pinch of salt, apple cider vinegar. Now there is one key ingredient that I'm going to use for this tofu that's going to like take it up a level and make sure it's crispy, and that's going to be a little bit of cornstarch. And so it's going to help create a crispy kind of texture while it's getting roasted in the sheet pan, on the sheet pan. Get our red pepper flakes in there for the heat. Don't forget our avocado oil. And then this time I'm gonna just use a spatula because I don't want my hands to get dirty. And all I'm doing is just tossing it like this. Let me show you. See, just being gentle. And I want to make sure every part of the tofu gets covered. And pour this also in the same sheet pan as the chickpeas and as the garlic. And then we'll just put this right into the oven too. Oh! We'll put it on the bottom rack. You see it's starting, the veggies are starting to roast up. Okay, so I actually forgot one thing. I actually forgot about the cauliflower. So let me show you how to do the cauliflower. So it's gonna be the same thing. It actually should have went on there with the chickpeas, so I should have used a bigger sheet pan. But we're gonna use this sheet pan. Just like last time, we're gonna add parchment paper. We're gonna season the cauliflower the same way as the chickpeas and the same way as the tofu. And then I am gonna do a little bit of the kale. This will shrink up. So half cauliflower, half kale. Like this. I'm gonna use some of this Italian seasoning. And really just think about what is it that you like to use. You know, you make it your own. Some of this garlic doesn't require much because the roasting is going to bring out most of the flavor. Pinch of salt. Some cracks of black pepper. I think. And then I keep forgetting to add the heat. You gotta have some heat. Or at least I have to have some heat. So a little bit of red pepper flakes. But the combination of garlic and a little bit of oil and salt, to me with the veggies, it like makes the veggies taste so good. And then when you roast it, that flavor is going to come out even more. And all I'm looking for when I'm adding, I want to add a little bit more oil to the kale, just because I want that kale to crisp up in the oven, because we want that kind of crunchy texture. I know a lot of people like that crunchy texture, whether it's with chips and stuff. We're going to mimic that with the kale. I just try to massage that. It's going to make sure all the flavors get into the leaves and that it crisp up. Okay, so you want it to be kind of glossy. And this goes into the oven too. So it's actually been a little closer to 30 minutes of the first pan being in the oven, and you can see it's nice and roasted looking. So we're going to take that out. While the veggies for the sheet pan are cooling down, wash off this mushroom stem off. You don't need, well, we can save it for something else now. Mushrooms. Okay, so now let's just flip them. You can see it's turned nice and brown. That's what we want. That's flavor. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of this. This is Tabitha Brown Sunshine seasoning. When you look on the back, it does not have any added salt. So that's why I like this one. There is some brown sugar. So that's why it's important to make sure you look at the ingredients. There is some brown sugar that's add a little bit of this Trader Joe's umami seasoning blend. Now, look at that first ingredient. The first ingredient is kosher salt. So this is why usually I don't get seasoning blends because they add salt to them. So since I see salt in this, I'm not going to add any salt myself. And then I'm going to add some poultry seasoning, which is just a blend of thyme, sage, marjoram, rosemary, black pepper. And now we'll keep those mushrooms right there. We'll add a little bit more oil, just a little bit, and saute up our kale stems. And this is going to add a nice crunch to the top of the soup. It's going to take up all that seasoning that we used from the mushrooms. I'm going to add a little bit of water to deglaze and get up all that flavor that's stuck at the bottom of the pan. So that way all the flavor stays in the mushrooms and the kale. With a little bit of water there, I'm just going to cover it and let it simmer for a few minutes. Okay, now so I'm going to take this top off. Most of the liquid is gone. Alright, so we're done here. Let's get this roasted garlic. If you squeeze, look at that, nice and soft. That roasted garlic flavor is going to be so good. Drop in all those roasted vegetables from the sheet pan right into the blender. I made some stock here with the veggie bouillon that I talked to you guys about. So I'm gonna add probably about 2 cups to here. Remember, if you're trying to be more mindful of your salt intake, instead of adding this, just add water. And then we're gonna blend it. It's nice and pureed. But the thing that's gonna take it to the next level is adding a little bit of cream. About a cup of soy milk, about a cup. I'm doing this by eyeball. I'm not actually measuring out a cup. And you can add as much liquid as you want to. You can add more liquid if you want it to be a little bit soupier. You can add less if you like it to be a lot creamy. I like mine creamy, so I'm gonna keep mine just like this. So put some of the tofu on there. Crumbles of our chickpeas. It looks very good. The soup is very silky and creamy, and the crunch from the chickpeas and the cauliflower and the tofu is great. It's great. It's better than the first time I made it. And it's spicy. It has a little kick with the red pepper flakes. And I love the color. It's got like a turmeric color, but we didn't use any turmeric. I think most of this is coming from the paprika and the carrots. It was really good. And the creaminess is also coming from the cauliflower. I hope you try this. Tell me what videos you want to see next time. I'll see you in the next video.